Glorious Ruse, welcome to the chat program.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for sticking in as we work through like 15 minutes of technical issues.
Yeah, you know what? Nothing brings umpires together like technical issues. It's my philosophy anyway. But I appreciate you sticking with the process and getting through. Thanks for coming on. You're. I know a lot of people are going to look forward to this one because you're such an iconic presence inside the International Kriegsspiel Society. Um, let's
Good choice of words.
well, you know, it's all about a little bit of wordsmithing. Where in the world are you?
I'm over in Germany at the moment.
Germany. Okay, GMT plus. Super. And talk through how you found the International Kriegsspiel Society. Just give us a little bit of background.
So this is actually going to be incredibly boring, which is, one day I was like, I would enjoy playing Kriegsspiel. I wonder who plays that. And being the age that we're in, I searched it and Google hit IKS. I joined on Discord. Uh, it's probably the slightly longer version of that is, God, like over a decade, yeah, about a decade ago, is hanging out at a graduate school. There was a war game elective going on. I wasn't part of it, but I
Right.
walked past it, and there are 20 odd people running back and forth frantically between rooms, which I stuck my head into, of course. People
Right.
with maps moving blocks around, and they all were
Right.
running back to the central professor. And I was like, what is this? They said, it's Kriegspiel. And then my next question was, can I play? And the professor, not the kindest of gentlemen, was like, no, there's only space for people who work here. And I wandered on my way, but that's where I first heard about
Right.
Kriegspiel.
So being denied that initial Kriegsspiel, it just set the hook in, I think.
Yeah, well, it was one of those ones I thought, oh, that might be interesting. Then real life caught up. But eventually, I think it was actually in mid-pandemic, I was like, maybe I should find out if I can play some Kriegspiel online, since we all have so much time now. And there you go.
And here's
Maybe.
where, yeah, I'll say this. You chart a unique course in the world because whenever I talk to other umpires, say, how'd you find the IKS? I say, oh, there was a super bunny hop video or there was a Little Wars TV video or I stumbled into it. You actually had the willful idea that you wanted to play Kriegspiel and then you found it. So you are unique in the world. I love that. Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And you're a historian by interest, right? I mean, so you love the history because we've had a chance to hang out a little bit in DMs. You have a ferocious amount of knowledge. So you're a historian by temperament.
Yeah, I'm a historian by temperament. Admittedly, I also took an undergrad in it, but largely because it seemed way easier than engineering or math. I
Yeah.
was like, oh yeah, I'll happily write 2 papers a semester per class. Like that's means the other 11 weeks I don't have to do homework. This is great.
Right. That shows your wisdom as well. You're right. It's a much better way to go, particularly if you're interested in it. And now, which period is of the most interest to you? I know you have a broad range of knowledge. What's your period of interest?
So I maintain that Kriegspiel as a whole is best suited to black powder, just
Right.
sort of the foundational dynamics and assumptions of it.
Right.
I do find World War II to be interesting, and I think
Yeah.
I'm considering Korea. Once you get much more modern than that, I find it starts to break down, though I have an interest. And once you go too much prior to that, yeah, I know there's many people who say you can Kriegspiel it, but I'm kind of like,
Right.
not realistically, right? Because you've got wind up armies at that point. You kind of make a plan and off they go, and you
Right.
hope it works.
And a planning process, and then off it goes. With the results kind of pretty programmed. But if you were to pick up a book at your local bookseller, what period is the most interesting to you personally?
Ooh, that's a good one. I suspect like far too many history nerds, I've read far too much about World War II.
Yeah.
But I've become increasingly interested in black powder really as a result of Kriegspiel, right? Like
Okay.
I've divin, yeah, back in on the American Civil War as a direct result of coming here, as
Yeah.
opposed and really down at the tactical history level, right? Okay, let's go find all the regimental histories and the documents and what did the actual combat look like, as opposed to okay, yeah, kind of the classic story of the war.
Yeah. Yeah. And you ran just your most recent game was the Civil War. What would you call that? Was it was nearly? nearly skirmish in terms of its detail, but it was a tactical game, Civil War game, right? It
Yeah,
was,
it was a tactical level Civil War game. It was about a division on each side, and it really used Damon's new pieces, which
yeah,
are exceptional because they give you the feeling of skirmish level detail, but without having to put in the skirmish level detail umpire effort. You can just twig a couple pieces. Okay, that one's a loose looking line. That one's a big mob of men. That one's lines, and you flip the lines around their columns. And so it very much gives you the verisimilitude of, oh my, each and every company is being considered, but realistically, it's just the pieces allow you to have clever inputs.
right. Well, I mean, that's why it actually, I spectated that game and it read like a skirmish game because of the detail, which is a function of those pieces, but also the incredible amount of detail that you put into the reports. Where did you develop that report style? You have a unique report style in terms of the absolute ground level detail that you give. And how did that emerge and what was your inspiration for the way you approached that?
Yeah, so I think the overall thing is I came into IKS and I think I almost ended up assistant umpiring before I ever got to play a game because
Uh-huh.
that was back in the battle days where there were like three umpires for 500 people. And I noticed that a lot of the games felt like, okay, I'm playing a board game with a novel input mechanism, right?
Right,
I said, well, no, that can't be right. This was supposed to be a game about command, not about, homebrewed combat systems. And if it's a game about command, then you have to give the player the experience of command, which
right,
includes, frankly, when it comes to report, like it's not enough just to describe you went around the right because he knows more than that. He sees more than that. There's more weighing on the commander at that point in time. He knows what he tried to do. He knows whether or not it worked. He, to the extent that he can observe it or hear about it or have it reported to it, kind of knows why it went the way it did, maybe, or at least
right,
has a thought on the matter. And when you take that away from people, when you just go, you went around the right, but the attack stalled. Well,
right,
he doesn't learn, was it a circumstance that did it? Was it my decision that did it? Was it shitty luck that did it? Was it something that next time I should learn to consider that did it? Was it my own crappy orders that did it, right? You have no
right.
idea.
You give that's great. Yeah, I'm thinking now about the many of your reports that I've read. So you really give the why of the outcome, which gives that little bit of instructive piece of information on it.
Yeah, it's also presumably, players get more than one move in the game.
Right,
So they should probably know at least once or twice, why did your last move end up the way it did? It may just be shit luck.
right,
Or, as we like to describe it, men didn't fight, morale failed, etc. In which case I try to flavor the report. So, okay, there's nothing wrong with sending four Napoleonic columns straight up the gut at someone they outnumber. It just wasn't your day, right? Like the troops
right.
stopped early and started shooting. Can't help
Yeah,
it. It's
right.
a real thing commanders need to deal with, but it wasn't you.
That's a great point, right? So your decision wasn't a bad one. It's just it didn't work out, right? Necessarily, right? Or your approach wasn't a bad one. It's an interesting point. So talk about you're famous for your from the saddle games. Talk about that a little bit and how you came to that.
Yeah, so I think that's really a continuation of the previous comment, which was Kriegspiel should be more than a board game with a novel input. It should feel like you're commanding troops. And for it to feel like you're commanding troops, the first step is make the player act like a commander to the extent that you can. You don't need to put on your full role playing guys and get your Ren fair on, but you should think, if I want that column of infantry mucking its way up a dirt road in the woods to execute a bold flank and I'm half a mile away from them, well, how the fuck am I going to make that happen? Excuse my
Right,
French, right? Like that's a real consideration, especially at the levels we play at where you're a brigade commander, you're a black powder division commander. Like
right,
those are the details that battles live and die on in the period. Like that is the commander's trade. It's not finding the big air on the map. it's so fucking hard to get people to even just move in a straight line that finding a big
Right.
arrow on the map is a completely tertiary idea.
So if you have a player who is phoning it in, basically, just writes in the line, move down the road or attack the hill or whatever. That's one level. And then let's say that there's a player who shows thoughtfulness and includes lots of details. How do you advantage that player, or what is it that you do to reward thoughtful command from the saddle?
So to start with, uh, I have to admit, I start by loading up the games with appropriate human capital to try and avoid the guy who says attack the hill as
Yep.
his two-word order.
Yep.
Uh, and that starts when recruitment. I usually put it right there in the recruitment message. Hey, there are games that let you just say attack the hill. This isn't one of them, uh, just
Right.
so you know. And then I usually look for a mix of there's a couple old guard veterans, there's a couple people who they're not veterans, but they're known entities of quality, and a handful of promising newcomers who I've usually seen somewhere on a server acting thoughtfully themselves. It's not a 100% outcome, but it goes a long way to preventing me from ever having to make that decision in the first place.
Yep.
But if it does come right down to it, yeah, I have no problem telling a guy who's continue to move down the road if you're on marching simulator. I got it. It's not entirely appreciated, but I got it. But
Yeah.
if you're actual in the hooking and jabbing and attack the hill, I tend to treat it as if he just turned to a staff officer and said, Major, we attack that hill.
Got it.
And we see what the fuck happens.
Yeah. That's really the major. That would be however, someone who gives you a thoughtful answer, whether it's, regardless of the background of the person, but thoughtful order, actually tries to handle the tactical situation, then you give them a little more leeway on the execution or a little
Yeah,
more
I usually give them benefit of the doubt on coordination. Um,
coordination. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, really, before I move any piece in a contested space, uh, my first consideration is has this move been coordinated? Has it been commanded? Like the very human aspect of can I make those people do those things? And if someone's been thoughtful, they've kind of made a good effort at it. Maybe it's not the absolute perfect answer, but you're like, yeah, it's worth a good shot. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
Whereas if someone hasn't made a good effort at it, you're like, well, I suspect your coordination is about to go poorly.
Yeah, when the umpire suspects it, it's usually so.
Yeah, weird. I mean, you have a corps going up against a regiment, it won't matter. The mob will take over. But
Right. Right. You focus in on that coordination piece. So if you have, for instance, two regiments reporting to a brigade, and the person's a brigade commander in this example, and they give you a thoughtful message, you just consider those two regiments will act in concert. If they give you a less thoughtful message, those two regiments might get out of sync, would be the way that you'd think about it.
it'd be, yeah, sort of. That'd be my first layer. My next layer on that would be if it has two regiments. When he says a thoughtful message, well, what did he do? If the two regiments are on line and he's in front of them, he
Yeah.
says, yeah, forward march, follow me. You're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I bet two regiments would indeed forward march and follow him.
Right.
If he sends dispatches or staff officers or some other form of command, yeah, that's probably the second layer check on coordination is did the means and the ways were they appropriate to the ends he was looking for?
So one of the things that you do when you play, I'm switching gears just slightly, but it's in the same vein that I want to call out is and get your thoughts on is you have a peculiar facility for inventing sub characters in your units. So there's always somebody that you invent and send off to do something for you, which I think is it's very good gameplay. Talk about you're unique in that. Talk about how you feel about that, or you like when players do that, like they create the subaltern that's going to go off and do stuff. Because you do it as a player, I think it's great. Where did that idea come from?
So honestly, it came from watching a couple other players. I have to give Damon credit when he
Okay.
rolled on one of the very first ACW games I ran.
Uh-huh.
He I had a nameless major mutter because he just told the column to, go forward, now stop, now come forward, now stop. And I was trying to send Damon a message like, people people are probably not thrilled with this whole like we're
Right,
moving, we're stopping, we're moving, we're stopping.
right.
And he of course immediately gave that major a name and chewed him out and then sent him back to tell him to fucking stop anyhow. So I was like, okay,
That's great.
fair
Yeah.
enough. Now I'm just gonna run with this. We have a character now. And once I saw the value in that, I was like, well, I'll just start doing it. I admit there's also an ulterior motive when I'm playing, which is to remind the umpire,
Yeah,
like yes, I'm a commander, I'm here, but I have people. They do things. Some of them can be trusted, some of them can't. They're going to report to me. They're going to have opinions. My span of control is more than the 400 meters you're trying to show me. Uh,
exactly. And I think as an umpire, because I've you've played in my games and you've used this technique as an umpire, it's not an offensive thing. It's like, oh, that's right. A person can go run over to that regiment that's out of sight and give them a message or find out information. And as a result, you get more information. I think it's a technique that could be propagated in the community with great positive effect because it's a great way to play.
yeah, I mean, it's also historically that's why you see Napoleon or whoever running around with 30 dudes next to him. It's because like, all right, okay, you go over there, you go over there, you
Right.
come back, you take this message over there. It's
There's a famous anecdote of Wellington had a commercial guy come and he sent him forward with a message. So he said, while you're here, run down
yeah.
to the cavalry with this message, right? So yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that's great. And how do you handle it when somebody violates the from the saddle? Somebody gets a little ahead of themselves, because even the great players will get ahead of themselves. How do you course correct people gently or ungently?
So the first effort is usually gentle. Um,
Right.
I admit there's a lot of human judgment, aka my judgment, going on here as to, hey, did they just get ahead of themselves in good faith or maybe a slight misunderstanding? Fine, sure, mild correction, mild reminders. If reminders don't work, sometimes things just go wrong. But if I feel it is a deliberate neglect of the process, at that point, I'm usually somewhat irate because I've advertised it, I've mentioned it, I've told everyone up front it. I put about 5 slides up front of what
Right.
do good orders look like. And if you still come out of that with, yeah, I don't want to do that, at that point, I'm not really thrilled that you took a spot from another player.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So you triggered a thought. Is that actually PowerPoint, your little slides where you
yeah, that's actually PowerPoint. I'm an office drone by nature. So,
right? You exude that office droneness with this wonderful PowerPoint. I love it. They're usually five different slides.
yeah,
Seven. I love it.
yeah, I also find the historiography around a lot of these things is different, very different. You can read really books within the last 70 years and get three different versions of the Civil War.
Right.
So I like to just establish up front, this is the system I believe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You may believe that it didn't look like that, and that's excellent, but you should probably know for your own judgment, this is what goes.
This
Uh,
is the physics of the universe you're about to enter. Yeah.
right.
I played in your Alexandria game. That was my first play-by-post game when I was the holding down
Yeah.
the fort at the
Yeah, you're holding down the literal fort on the north
literal
flank.
fort in the north. That was the first one. Um, Play by post, you don't have an opportunity to do live based on being a busy guy in real life, but so you've really perfected the art of play by post. How do you resolve a turn like in great detail? How do you go through it? What do you do first when you resolve a turn?
So the first thing I do is honestly, I check if all the players' orders are in. Do I
Yep.
have to remind anyone, etc. But after we kind of done the basic housekeeping of the turn, usually I do a quick review to see do any of these orders interact with each other, friendly or enemy.
Right.
And almost naturally, you're going to end up breaking the battlefield out into no more than three zones, honestly, in most games, just to how things go. And then I typically execute one zone at a time. That way, I'm not running all the way down through red, all the way down through blue. It's okay. How do these sets of orders interact with each other after I've assessed them for command, after I've assessed them for coordination? What do the physics look like, and how do they play together?
Yeah.
And then you usually get to sort of an inflection point where you're like, okay, I have three lines coming up the hill. They're a little bit draggled against one regiment that just rushed there. Now what?
Right.
And yeah, repeat that. And that honestly, you give that a think for what that is, because I do run a very free Kriegspiel. And then after doing the think, I roll 2d6, see if I was right or if something other than what I thought
Something
happens.
unusual happened. So when you basically make an assessment of what you think was happening when the bedraggled unit comes up and the units in good order face them, and you say, I think this is the outcome, and then you roll based on that, and that adjusts from there.
Right. And it could be that the dice go hard one way or the other, in which case,
Yeah.
okay, the unlikely happens. And if it gets particularly unlikely, I fortunately know where all the Civil War Medal of Honor reports are, so I can always go Control F right through that report database, and then okay, that one looks close. Pull it, tweak it, modify it, and there you go. You've
Yeah,
got Medal of
right.
Honor winner.
So you go into a Medal of Honor database and get the essence of one of the citations and pull it out.
Yeah, and that's really at the extreme ends of like, you know what, that probably
That's
shouldn't have happened that way, but it did. So here you go.
I make sure I read this report. You did that in the tactical game. You actually used the lieutenant who ran forward along the line with the guide on, I think it was.
Yeah, it was a real guy, Lieutenant Adams. The regiment was moving under fire, and the regiment next to him was both guidon bearers, functionally color bearers, got shot, and he ran and picked up both flags. And Mel Gibson's got nothing on him because he
Nothing on
just went
him.
running forward with two flags behind him, and the whole line followed. Uh,
Right.
yeah,
Sadly,
so you're like, sometimes you get that guy.
sometimes that guy, that's your 12 or your 2 roll on the 2D.
Right, exactly.
So do you tend, so when you get an extraordinary roll, so the way you do it is you roll, just because I use your system. So weirdly, I'm at a disadvantage because I know your system. Usually I'm asking the umpires because I don't understand their system, but I actually have adapted your system. So, but basically you use one die roll for the situation. An extreme roll of 2 would advantage one side or a 12 would advantage the other. Do you usually advantage one side or you disadvantage? How do you apply that?
I mean, that's half of half of one or half a dozen one, six of the other.
Right.
You, Usually, what it is in the 6 to 8 range. Things kind of play out how I think they should play out. In the 3 to 5 or four, really 4 to 5, 9 to 10 range, I say, okay, you know, there's a lot of factors I took into account here. What if I weighted one of them heavier?
Right.
What if it was muddier? What if there was on the map we can't see, but a bit of dead ground in front of the orderly units and the bedraggled units got to approach for 100 meters for free? What then? And does it play out differently? And then I write that into the report is like, yeah, that also helps when players are like, why the fuck did it go that way? I was sitting with ordered units and his bedraggled people came up. Well, it went that way because they slipped into a piece of dead ground and
Right.
then they came up.
Right.
And then once we get to the more extremes, kind of 10, 11, 3, 4, or 3, 11 rather, that's when I start really putting a thumb on the scale. And like you said, 2 and 12 are, I try and make those outlier events. I think if you saw St. Gond, when the German artillery train full of shells mid reload took a hit, it was like, yeah, that was a 2.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Right. And which is good because it also introduces some of the wild events that happen in a battle that you read about. You're like, how did that happen? Wow, that was a real game changing event. In this case, setting up 500 tons of ammunition, blowing a hole in the line and killing a player, and leaving the rest moving, choking through smoke for 2 turns was a game changing opportunity.
Right. It's an extraordinary event that carries over into other turns versus just resolves that one combat or that one interaction in a certain way. How would you, so the ability to free Kriegspiel comes from a deep knowledge of a period. So if you World War II, for example, if you've read thousands of combat reports, you're going to intuitively know how to free Kriegspiel, a World War II situation, Civil War, etc. What recommendation would you give to an umpire to get that level of knowledge?
So I think I would say there are really three elements to free KS.
Hmm.
One is combat knowledge, and start with a survey work. You pick it for your period. Patty Griffith's a fun one. You can move on to the actual reports themselves, which is one of the reasons the American Civil War is useful, is it's not that hard to find actual tactical action reports,
Right,
and especially if you're an English speaker.
right,
And that's combat. But combat is the first step. The other one is command, and that's a slightly harder one to resolve. You can find it in a lot of the same sources, but you need to kind of look at it and vibe it. And that's where we really go to point three, which is like human experience matters, right? Like if you've ever worked in a large organization, if you've been a middle manager, if you've worked for a middle manager, at some point you realize that humans interacting with humans is a messy business. There's personalities, there's friction, words matter, things are interpreted rightly or wrongly. And probably the underrepresented part of free KS, in my opinion, it's kind of a broken record across this interview, is playing out the human dynamic of command. Because the combat, even if you didn't memorize 1,000 combat reports and you only had a couple paragraphs to go off of, you could probably make combat good enough to squint at, provided you weren't, only YouTube deep.
right.
It is the human element of it that honestly just rewards umpires who have metaphorical or literal mud on their boots. And that can be whatever it is you've done, right? If you work on a ranch out west, you probably know more about horses and cavalry, and you could
Yeah,
probably take a guess how that, you probably have just a better insight into how cavalry works. If you're LaFontaine and you are a retired senior middle manager, you have a strong increase in your understanding of, it's actually really hard to be a senior middle manager and go through 2 layers of next management that then kind of
yeah,
percolates out the far end as something that is hopefully close to what your boss told you he wanted. And if you don't have that experience, it's very hard to rebuild lived experience.
yeah.
Um,
Or if you've worked in a warehouse, you know how hard it is to get everything to the right spot.
right. If you've
Literally,
lived,
right? Goof ups in a warehouse. Yeah, absolutely right.
yeah, exactly. Or even frankly, just physical labor, right? So I've
Yeah,
recommended to many umpires, like one of the easiest and best things you can do to understand Kriegspiel before basically the age of the motor is go walk 12 miles with 60 pounds on your back.
right.
Right. Like just do it. It's not as a test of your manliness or anything. Just go do it. And when you come back, tell me if you feel like charging a mile uphill with a bayonet.
Right. So when you write the report that the soldiers are exhausted, that's the feeling, right? You point
Right.
to that's what it feels like. Not it's exhaustion is different than just tired, is different than just and fresh. They're actually physically feel very, very different. Yeah, I think that's right. I think people who exercise, running, biking, whatever, also have a good sense for that physical. So if you um, exercise to completion of any format, you have this feeling of being wiped out, like what it feels like. I think that's right.
Yeah, and absolutely. And Yeah,
I
or
loved
if you
your. We brainstormed very briefly, and it's sadly one of the projects that just didn't see the light of day with everything going on. But this idea that we were just having fun in the channel the one time about creating a game where you physically had to go do the thing to move your unit. So if you were going to move your unit 3 miles, you had to go actually walk 3 miles and kind of prove it, so that your unit could move, right? So you're physically living a version of what you had. So I still think that would be a terrific,
yeah,
right?
so I want to say, well, we never got to it. I want to say Carter actually went out, lives near Monocacy, and he actually went out to Monocacy Battlefield with however many people were playing it. And they walked around the battlefield, each guy representing his units functionally. Like, okay, there you
Yeah,
go. You want to cross the stream? Go ahead, walk across the stream.
right. There you go. I think that's more organized versions of that. It's just one of the many, many different formats and many different innovative ways we can use this format to create new experiences. But walking that ground, it has health benefits, but also it really gives you an appreciation for the physicality of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, right. And frankly, even then, we're still kind of lowballing it, right? Because probably
Yeah,
the realistic version is you march those 12 miles, you half jog yourself for 3/4 of a mile, you sprint just about for a 300-meter run, and then do the equivalent of like just wrestling 3 rounds, right? And at the end of that, you've done a Napoleonic attack
right,
from the march that we love doing. And you very quickly wonder, like, hey, man, I bet that'd be a lot easier to do if I didn't walk 12 miles beforehand. Maybe
right.
that's why armies didn't just fight each other after completing 15-mile marches as fast as possible. Uh,
Yeah. I heard a ranger at Gettysburg giving a tour say these were very hard men. They would march 15 miles and then go into combat, and that was just how they lived. And back home, they had busted stumps by hand. So, like a very different type of person. And it's hard for us to conceive of that in our more modern technology-enabled
I
world
mean,
we live in, right?
it is at the same time, you don't want to overly buy into that. One of my favorite quotes. It's a Frenchman post Napoleonics. They're all reassessing the lores of it. And he's talking about marches. He says, you know, why is it that everyone's so afraid of to march 25 miles? He calls it like 10 milus or something for a
Hmm.
decisive blow. Yeah, if I have a force of 120,000, only 20 to 25,000 will be left behind on that march. And you're like, huh, well, that if you took away a fifth to six of a player's forces just because he marched 10
Right,
today,
right,
how many players would actually do it, right? As opposed to just saying, yeah, we're fine. And then his following is, and don't worry, because we'll stay on the field of battle for 3 days afterwards, so they'll all eventually catch up.
right.
Uh, and this is a veteran of Napoleon. He's somehow made his peace with the Bourbons, is still serving in the French army in a
Well,
senior position. And very clearly, his opinion is, oh, yeah, yeah. Well, once you go beyond a point, you just know that you're burning a chunk out of the force, but who cares, right?
right, right,
Such
right.
is the price of victory, which is a far, which is a far different look than, well, I mean, of course I go 15 miles and fight. Why wouldn't I?
Right.
Yeah,
This is
and
what we
Jackson,
do. Yeah, yeah, this is what we do. It's not even a
right,
question.
and to Civil War, to your park ranger point, like Jackson has an opinion in the Valley campaign. He starts with 9,000 men at the very start of it, and he arrives at his first battle with 3,000 men. And you're like, well, that is the price
Yeah,
of being extra hard, right? Yeah, you've got 3,000 hard men, but a few thousand extra rifles might have been really
might
useful.
have been helpful, right? I still think it's one of the things that we don't get right is straggling, which is what you're describing, right? So the
Yeah.
soldiers are still soldiers. They just fell out for a variety of reasons. And in the Civil War accounts, there were thousands of men behind the battle lines trying to find their units.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially like any black powder army. on the march it has straggling, and you variate between those who simply don't catch up and those who do. And
Yeah.
what's the first line is first they fall back, then they fall out, then they fall over. And I think one of the real advantages of rest days and pauses at the operational level is functionally those are the days that your 20,000 men you left behind slowly catch back up with the army. Whereas if you just keep going, they just don't catch up, right? You've lost a battle against the road in return for your speed. Um,
Well, it's an interesting idea about of somehow representing straggling because everything in Kriegsspiel looks so clean. You've got your battle units, and then there's nothing else. But in fact, there were wagons and wagon trains, and they
yeah, oh
run
yeah,
our ammunition up, and then thousands of people straggling. I mean, you had the front lines, but then there was a whole mess right behind them.
yeah, and I think that's one of the to your point with tactical, really, as we zip to what like one of the reasons I like Damon's pieces so much is because a unit that charges, like it can win, it can lose, but there's men for fucking miles, right? There,
Yeah,
there's men who never came along in the first place back at the start. There's men who tripped on the way up. There's men who got disorganized. Like it is not my block has triumphed over your block. It is now a scattering of men over 400 yards, 600 yards, wherever that you need to physically recohere. And it's very difficult to represent that with kind of clean blocks. And even
right,
tokens can tell you, okay, that's a disorganized unit, but it doesn't quite physically vibe. To your second point, yeah, the that is one of the areas I'd really like to get better at because I'm not as well read as I would like to be.
right.
Is we know that a lot of what we leave as white space on the map isn't white, right? There's everything from pickets and vedettes and couriers and people with signal flags and observation and wagons and parties going back to enforce the wagons.
Yeah,
Yeah, we tend to fall into the trap of I maneuver my blocks versus your blocks, and that's all there is. You're like, no, the area behind the army is, to your point, like quite a busy place,
right,
which is also one of those reasons why the classic bold flank is so difficult to pull off, is
right.
because there's a very good chance that a random major on a supply run goes, holy shit,
Yeah, look over there.
look over there. Someone should hear about that.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Talk about the Red River campaign. That was a campaign level ACW effort that tried to incorporate some of these moving parts. Just talk about what you were doing there, and I had a chance to play in that one and enjoyed it. So talk that through.
so one, I've been playing a lot of tactical. It's like, all right, tried time to go do something operational. As I started looking at the operational feelings out there, they felt very much like grand tactics, which is fun and useful. But again, going back to kick that dead horse just one more time, yeah, but grand tactics were not the whole of command at that level. Like the whole of command at that level is a multitude of things, and possessing the will to actually shove your people through the arrow that makes up grand tactics is a huge amount of it. I
Right.
was honestly inspired by there's a quote down by Chattanooga. I think I saw it on one of their little park service walls as they're touring the battlefield. I forget which general it was about, but it's like he had the rare ability to be a man who could see the thing that needed to be done, decide to do it, lay out his decision, and yet fail to make it happen every time. And I was like, yes, like that right there, that fourth part, that is the part we're missing.
Actually, not that rare. If you've had any experience in life, you know that that's not that rare.
Yeah, exactly. But
Right.
it's like the idea that you can make all the right decisions, and like if you cannot enact your will upon it to make it happen, like you're probably not going to be a good operational leader. And that was in the Red River. I hijacked Patty Griffith's time rules. He
Yep.
honestly, the time rules turned out to be less of a factor after they kind of got over their unique, interesting part. They were useful for making some people like realize like, oh, I need to have meetings, or I do need to be where my boss is to speak to my boss, type of thing. But honestly, the schedule your day part of it gradually receded in value. And I think the real value of it was we learned, okay, if you can put two or three, and I certainly overbid and put, too many items in the stew, but if you can put two or three real sort of high notes of what is your command like on a player operationally, you can really create that. You're not the guy moving pieces and those pieces happen to have march columns. You're the guy trying to deal with the fact that you have green troops who haven't marched, or you have U.S. colored troops who, for obvious
Political
reasons, are
dimension.
not
Yeah, you had
are
a
not going to interact well with the southern population.
yeah.
Uh, or you have a feud with the Navy, you
Right.
name it, right? Like all those things that you read in a history book, and you're like, oh,
One of the
I can't.
interesting pieces of that is that you would as a player be penalized if you didn't sleep enough. So
Yes,
it would degrade your abilities if you tried to, stay up all night, 3 nights in a row.
yes, it was, and I had a small schedule of it. Where it's like, hey, you can run yourself hard, and I'd only mildly penalize efforts to get things happening.
Right.
And I think everyone was cognizant enough of it that they didn't really push themselves to exhaustion. There was one player who would like to ride his staff 20 miles out, so I I often
But
gave
that
him
was
report.
that was the really interesting thing about it is by doing that, you knew that just riding around was going to penalize you. So you went to a more static command based on time management. I thought that was my big takeaway from that is like when you put the reality of sleep and different meetings and thing in there, you were not rewarded by just riding around the battlefield.
Yeah, right. Or you had to choose to do so. You had to knowingly
Right.
mortgage the future for today because this moment was worth it to you.
Right. And so you had to choose that moment. I thought that was a really terrific subtle point, not so subtle point. It was a terrific play point on that. It's like if you're going to write up to a command, you got to really make it count. You got to really understand what and why you're doing it, rather than just some players without penalty just kind of float around the battlefield. So that was a very cool element. Hopefully, you go back to that and try that again because I thought there was a lot of really cool elements to that game.
Yeah, I mean, it was also a ton of work, which
Yeah,
is
well, there's that. The campaigns are their own thing. Yeah, we can't possibly have this discussion without talking about your space game.
oh yeah, the space game. Honestly, I think that one is
What happened
for,
there?
it's a fairly small audience. The server's still up. One day
Is
I may
it?
touch it. Yep, it's still up. It's yeah, I think what really happened is an Umpire to be named had me come beta test an Ender's game for him, and
Yeah.
I found the handling of it dissatisfying. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, right, that's it. I'm gonna go do a space game
Physics.
with physics. And then I immediately said, "There's no way I'm doing all those calculations." So I found a game that had already done the space game with physics, and I
You know,
just,
like, the funny thing is you're such an articulate spokesman for black powder as a way that Kriegsspiel works, and then you jump into this thing where literally angles and physics. It just blew me out of the water. I tried that one game. I think I went in 5 different directions. I got blown up and I left. It was very funny.
yes,
How many
Mila
games?
did kill you, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My Mila just killed me. Amelia just killed me. She got me. She just went straight at me and got me. How many games did you run through on that?
I think I ran through your game. I
Yeah.
think I ran through, and I realized I needed to actually teach people how to maneuver in vectors
Yeah.
after that. So I ran through a practice maneuver vector game with some other people who initially were like, "Ugh, I can't believe I'm practicing just driving to the buoy." And
Right.
then when we went to their actual game, they're like, "Oh crap! It turns out being able to drive to the buoy is
So
the
it
core
is
skill.
big part of the game.
That is the core skill of this: is getting the ship in the right spot."
Right. I think it was so um, off the beaten path for what you largely advocate for. I had to bring it up because it was one of the experiments that you did. What's next? Where are you headed next in terms of areas of interest?
So it's been a moment since I ran a game. Part of it's because life has been busy over here.
Yeah.
So I have a few topics playing around my head. I've
Okay.
done some work on a Pusan perimeter sort of semi-operational level game,
All right.
um, which I'm just staring at how daunting it would be to run and trying to decide if I want to actually do it. But the core conceit of which is by the time you're running 1950 cores around the battlefield, you don't plan for today, you plan for 4 days from now,
Right.
and how to make the interaction between the commander who says, yeah, I want this to happen, and then his loyal planners who basically get one shot to be like, you mean this boss? And he kind of has to say, yeah, that's what I like, go do it, or no, don't do it. But then he realizes he's probably waiting a few more days before his core reorients,
Right.
or he risks significant, yeah, degradation of command and control as he starts verbally calling up his Pisos down division, be like, just get over there and do the thing, which is great until someone needs to say where did the artillery shells go? Why does that guy have the defense? Why is that guy getting barbed wire for a defense delivered once you told him to attack type stuff?
Right.
That's one thought. Another thought is the Battle of Hagstrasse has caught my eye and for Napoleonic tactical. It's a battle in 1814 that happens in a snowstorm. I'm like, wow, that's sufficiently interesting and different that maybe it'd be worth a crack. And then I'm also debating between some sort of early Battle of the Atlantic game, sort of in the summer of 1940, or something to do with the Battle of Britain.
You were going
So
to a bomber. It wasn't Battle of Britain.
yes,
You were to a bomber.
I still want to do 1943 bombing the Reich, but I can't find a freaking map. Like
Okay.
that is my long pole in the tent is finding a sufficient
Right.
aerial detailed map of Germany that the players have something to work with.
Right.
Uh, because without that, yes, I can give you an Excel spreadsheet, but that's not doesn't really get the vibe.
You do like two or three games. Well, how many games are you able to, you kind of do one a quarter, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I was running at one a quarter. This year I'm a little bit behind on that.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
things have gotten rather busy. Also,
Sure.
truthfully, between learning to make a map from you for the last on the road to Raymond or on the road to Vicksburg tactical game, and
Yeah.
then Red River was just whew, like Red River was a lift like that
Yeah.
because I realized to make it operationally viable, you had to be able to honor the input the players give, which I think is true of all games. If you ask a player to give you something, you have to be willing to honor what he gives you. And that means telling him what happened, why it happened, where it's all going. In an operational command, you're like, yeah, there are a good 500 to 1,000 words of stuff that that commander cares about happening on a given day. He's got the
Right.
right to know. And if he doesn't know, then he's just moving pieces on the board and why bother?
Yeah.
And the answer is, of course, you bother because it's still fun and easy and gets you 90% of the way there. But so I'm in a bit of a recovery period right now, and
Yeah.
I flick back and forth between, yeah, I could do a really easy Napoleonic ACW tactical game that I could, yeah, go run a turn every 2 or 3 days, pretty good at it, keep 10 players in there, wouldn't have to think too much, be great. Or do I go
Yeah,
double?
I think you're a model. You illustrate how to have a busy life and still keep your finger on the hobby because there's some of us that can just do this all the time and run games a lot. Um, James is an extraordinary guy because he's got like I'm a Facebook friend of his and I see the kind of things he does with his family. He's a very active family man as well. And he does all the volume of, I don't know how many hours of a day. I'm pretty sure that he uses your space game to bend space time because I don't know how he could get all the things done that he gets done. But then you've got a busy life and you're doing your thing and you still are able to keep your finger on the hobby because I think that's laudable. And I think it's also a very valid way to interact with the hobby is say, hey, I can only do a couple of these a year, so I'm going to pick my shots.
Yeah, I think so. It takes time, and it's sort of the weird PvP live thing, right? It's most of us who are adults of some variety or another just you can't sit down for 6 hours straight on
Right.
just about anything ever. Or if you did, as much as I enjoy my internet friends, yeah, would my internet friends qualify for 6 straight hours? And you're like, yeah, probably not.
Right.
No offense. Um,
It's
so you end up in PvP, and in PvP, that means, okay, you acknowledge that you're going to be running for 12, 14 weeks, 2 or 3 times a week. You're going to be putting 2 hours in, and you're like, that's the bill. So
yeah.
if you're going to pay that bill, yeah, it should be good, and
Right.
you should enjoy doing it.
Yeah, right. And so that right there is the key, right? I think you can really get off track. All umpires, and this is an interview or this is a discussion between umpires and our audience are umpires, right? So I don't expect anyone who's not umpiring for the IKS to listen to these things. And you really have to keep your finger on what you're enjoying because you're devoting a lot of time to these things, whether it's play by post or live, you know.
Yeah, 100%. It is, I've always said the four things to know, and the first one of them is like know your limits because, yeah, I really like what I think you actually posted somewhere new umpires. Like time is the currency here, your time or the player's time.
All right, so you have the podium. I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to make a concise point, or for you to make your concise point on why you can't really run a proper modern game. You've made it many
Okay.
times in writing, but this is you now have the podium.
Uh, as a concise point, hmm, I don't, you're probably going to have to do some editing to make this concise.
That's
But,
fine. Yeah.
but functionally speaking, the modern battlefield is both wildly complex enough, wildly dispersed enough, and wildly information saturated enough that any attempt to abstract it into sort of one player with an overhead view is going to be extraordinarily challenged. It's not
Yeah.
that you can't do it, but you've got to be good at so many things. You need to know how all the elements on the battlefield up to what you're working with interact with each other. And if you don't, the game's dead because you did it wrong. You need to know how the command and control function works because if you don't, the game's dead because you did it wrong. So if you see someone's like, yeah, I'm going to run a core exercise, you're like, okay, so you need to know about ATACMs, you need to know about limited munition rates, you need to know about counterfire radars, you need to know about supply, you need to know about interacting with National Command Authority, you need to know how that plays out to division staff, you need to know what your relative ROE is. You need to know, how your soft liaison works. You need to know everything there is to know that a core commander would reasonably know about. And if you don't, you are going to get it wrong. Oh, and then by the way, you need to find a way to abstract that back into playable mechanisms.
And even actual core commanders don't know all of that in total detail.
Yeah,
Staff members,
right. They don't. They're supported
right?
by, hundreds these days, plus hundreds of computers of stuff run by a bevy of subject matter experts below them, each running it, while full bird colonels who have spent 25 years perfecting each aspect of that craft run around behind them like puppy dogs to advise them.
Right.
Like it's you're
So,
just the odds that you get that right are they're not high. Let's put it
right.
that way.
So it ends
You
up
want to go
looking
down
like
to
it ends up looking like a Napoleonic battle with modern symbols on it, because in the end, your abstraction goes in the wrong direction.
yeah, and honestly, at the lower tactical level, you could sure you want to do a rifle company, you'd probably get that. Battalion, sure. You start moving to brigade and up, maybe.
Yeah.
You start going above that, and most people, as they start modern, are like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go up in. It's gonna be huge." You're just like, dude, you don't want to go there. You don't want to go there.
Yeah, yeah. I would just, yeah, I get it. It's okay. Because I know we get in these strings on the server, and I think I thought it'd be useful to just kind of give the summary of that. And even hearing you speak it, I got another couple pieces out of it. It's clear. That's great. What last what last thing would you present to the IKS umpires just as a general philosophy, or is there anything we've missed in
No, I think in summary, if I had to take away, I'd put it into really the two grand things is you want your players to be commanding troops,
Yeah.
not playing a game. And ultimately, you need to know your limits. You need to know how to run a game. You need to know your shit,
Yeah.
and you need to know your system. You do that, you'll probably be a good umpire.
There you go.
As you start taking things away from it, the odds go down.
Become a little less good and have room for improvement. Glorious Ruse, it's late where you are. Thank you so much for the time. And terrific. You and I, we communicate a lot on DM and compare notes. And so we probably could have had a 4 hour conversation, but I purposely steered it down to an hour, despite our technical difficulties. It was great having you on, and thanks so much. It was really a lot of fun.
Yep, thanks for having me, and I'll see you next time in your neighborhood.